a motion to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second?
Second.
Does anyone have a conflict of interest they would like to disclose?
I have nothing particular.
I would like to disclose that my parents live next to the proposed location of the Simply Crepes expansion.
Are they within 100 feet, Bob?
Okay, no one else?
No. I was supposed to have a conversation with Pierre about his proposed expansion. I wanted to go down and see what he was proposing, and so I visited him.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, the first public hearing we have tonight is for a tax cap override. This is not approval of the tax cap override, but it's the local law that would allow us to have a tax cap override. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there any discussion from the public on the proposed tax cap override legislation? None? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Would someone like to make a motion, or is there discussion from the board? I'll make a motion to approve the tax cap override legislation. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Next public hearing, we are proposing a public hearing for the proposed village budget.
So we're setting up the date for that, Bob? Is that what we're doing?
Correct. This is an actual public hearing.
Yeah,
No,
this
you're
is
having
the
a
public
public
hearing.
We're having a public hearing for the budget.
Oh, I'm early.
Yeah.
No, let's just do it.
The confusion is because we have another, in case we have further changes to the budget, we do have another date scheduled for the budget, so that's the reason for confusion tonight. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for the proposed 2019-2020 budget. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on the proposed budget for 2019-2020?
How are you going to proceed? By going down items or
Well,
categories or?
we really had proposed to do a presentation at the next meeting because Mary is out in part due to vacation time, in part due to some family issues. So we don't really, we have the tentative budget tonight. We've made changes to that to go to a $4 per thousand tax rate. We don't have the package from her tonight, so my proposal tonight would be to table this and then do a presentation at our next meeting, which was the plan we had scheduled. Correct.
Okay.
But if somebody had preliminary questions, we're certainly happy to answer them. If anything jumped out strangely.
Just kind of maybe unpacking a couple of categories.
Sure.
So of course, my eye lands on, litigation fees. And on the first page, it's, does this relate to a line item further back? This litigation attorney is that, I guess that's service. So is that an amount that is proposed, or is that in the budget because it's a carryover?
It's the amount that's proposed.
It's the amount that's proposed. We asked Mindy and Hodgson Russ for the best guesstimates based on where we were in the process of what we would anticipate in the coming year, and that's based on their projections to incorporate that into the budget.
Right, so on page 1 then, under law, the contractual expenses, that's the breakdown.
Yes.
Okay, That's where that 125 came from.
Yep.
And to be clear, we don't carry over expenses year to year. So anything you see in the budget should be a going forward expense for the fiscal year to come.
Right.
Any other questions?
As part of the budget presentation, would it be possible to include what our reserves are this year compared to other years? And just to get a sense of financially, because that seems to be our insurance policy for big unknowns. And I haven't heard a lot of discussion about that during it getting it back to where it needs to be.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
We will include that in the budget discussion, absolutely.
Part of the challenge, Chris, is that we're using other accounts as reserves. We've been playing a little bit of a shell game. And so the actual line item for reserves is going to be a certain amount. We can track that over time and show on a chart how that has depleted. And
But you can't necessarily use that money for anything you want if something unexpected came up. Is that what you're saying?
no, it's more that because it hasn't been enough, there have been funds pulled from other accounts.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes
And-
sense.
and
I think
so-
that's just part of.
Right, and so
Yeah.
to get a true picture of how much reserves were spent is a little harder than that. We can give you the actual number that we set aside for reserve, but it's not really the whole story.
Not set aside, I guess just what your account is at the end of each budget year.
We
Yeah,
can,
yeah, at the end of each
we
fiscal
can
year.
give you a pretty firm number of what is anticipated the reserve number will be at the end of this fiscal year.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be in the neighborhood, I think, of around 158,000, is that, am I right in that, Frank?
150,000, and it's actually what's called a fund balance.
Kind of what's left over in our accounts after
Net
the
worth,
end of just, yeah.
net worth, fund balance. So when there's not enough to meet the expenses, then it's drawn out of the fund balance. It's-
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think another thing that would be nice for the public to understand is the two grants, one related to the safety and safety plan and the other
Yeah.
to the building on the canal, the
Pavilion?
yeah, the pavilion.
Yeah, the pavilion.
It just seems like those grants have been around for a couple of years, few years, and there's never a plan to fund those. What's the trustees thinking on those? Those pretty much not gonna happen or no plan in the next few years.
We'll address that.
And also, would it be possible to, maybe if you're gonna do it in the presentation, you know, because usually you could see what was done this year and what the changes are going into the
Yes.
proposed budget and the percentage of, you know, ups or downs.
We have all that.
Okay, so that's gonna be.
That'll be part of the
wrapped into
presentation.
Okay.
Mhm. Any other questions? Okay, I would make a motion, we table this for, when's our next budget hearing?
Next Tuesday?
The 30th.
The 30th.
Sorry, I went blank. I think we scheduled that for 5:30.
We have code review.
We have code review at 5:30, so let's do it at 7, I think it's easier for people to attend to. Okay?
So this was an area we were gonna talk about scheduling, because I can't make that time. We wanted to talk about alternate
We
times.
can talk about it. My concern is, we're supposed to do this by the end of the month, Dan, so we really need to get it complete. But I'm gonna open up my calendar and we can talk about other dates.
Are we talking about the additional budget meeting, or are we talking about changing the date of our budget hearing?
Dorothea, what are our deadlines that we need to abide by?
I have to post this meeting within 3 days, so looking at that, it's a challenge.
Are we talking about an additional budget discussion? I just want to be clear what we're contemplating.
No, I think he's talking about he can't make the actual meeting on Tuesday.
Monday night, there's a comprehensive plan committee meeting.
So I'm looking at.
And Frank, you're away, yeah?
I can't make it, right,
You can't make it until the 30th.
until the 30th.
Okay. Well, then I think I will lose Frank.
Yeah, just giving my limits with posting, we're looking at a
Doesn't look like we have too many
Saturday, and
other
we're looking at
options.
Monday. Just, there's not enough time.
should go ahead on the 30th because we've got to get it done by the end of the month.
And room availability is the issue as well.
So is that a presentation?
Yeah. So
That's the presentation.
That's when the presentation will be next Tuesday.
Unless you want to move
7
the
p.m.
comp plan meeting.
I think that's going to be tough because there were a bunch of constraints in getting.
Yeah, I
the data
know,
out.
I mean, it's problematic.
So I think we got to do it on the 30th.
So you're moving it to April 30th at 7:30?
Mm-hmm.
And then to Lily's point, do we need a motion for that?
Bob made a motion, I'll need a second.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
So then to Lily's point, do we need an interim discussion? Is that something we want to just do now, or is that something we want to do at a different time? So I circulated an email to the team with my concerns. How do you want to discuss that?
Well, I think now is an appropriate time, because whatever our discussion is should be reflected in a presentation that's made next Tuesday. So why don't you, Dan, if you want to summarize your email that you sent this afternoon, you can discuss it.
Sure. Just pull it up. Okay. So here were the main challenges. My concern is that we haven't cut enough. And here were the out of the norm items. The budgeted personnel costs are budgeted to increase by 20% year over year, from 425,000 to 531,000. Is a very big number, and we all know where that's coming from. That's coming from a full-time building inspector. That's coming from a transition for one of our employees, so that they can hand off what's next, and that's coming from a full-time replacement for a deputy clerk. And you add those three things up, and you got an increase of 20%. That would put 4 full-time staff in the office on a given day, which seems high. Go ahead, Frank.
You're missing one. The union contract for the DPW, which accounts for 556,000 of our $1.3 million budget, will expire on December 31. We will start negotiating with the union probably October or November, and in that number is a projected 2% increase. So a good portion of that increase that you're citing is because of the union increase that we are projecting.
So I just want to rattle off some of these others. Trees are at 18K for this coming year. Last year they were at 9K, so that's double.
And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, but let me just go through all these. Defending ourselves on 75 Monroe lawsuits, we budgeted 125,000, which is pretty much in line with what is projected to happen this year, which I think we're all pretty comfortable that that number is accurate. The contingency amount bumping by another 20K. We've already talked about the addition there. And I'm not saying, I understand the reasons for all of these things, but it feels like we have not cut enough. And we've said yes to every single one of our wish list items, and I'm not sure we've made tough choices. Now, and then let me add a couple other things, and then I'll open it up to you guys. So, not in this budget, we've had a decision made against us by Judge Ark that very likely can cost us legal fees. That's not in the budget because we can't budget for it because we don't know what that is. The RG&E right-of-way costs, not in the budget because it's not done yet, but it very well could be $16,000. Was it 16 or 8? I think it was 16.
16.
Yeah. And then after we lift the moratorium, should developers come back and want to develop on Shane Place, that would be an increased cost that's not in the budget.
Except that the consultant fees would be chargeable back to the applicant.
Fair enough. But the legal fees wouldn't.
No, they would also be chargeable back to the applicant, not for litigation, but the legal consultant that worked on the projects, those would be chargeable back to the applicant.
with regards to the RG&E right-of-way, legal counsel is not here, so he could be of some help to us to explain that. But briefly, we met with one of the property owners, the major property owner, who has a major lease with the RG&E. That's the Collins family, and yesterday, and they've agreed to allow us access to the right-of-way, because without them allowing us access, we could not negotiate with the RG&E because we wouldn't have access to it. So that was a major step that happened yesterday. Now we are talking with them about various options. One of them being us taking over their lease and putting together a parking district,
Right.
which would tax all of the property owners, which would fund the cost of the RG&E lease.
Yeah.
So that's the plan, and the thought is, part of the plan, the consideration is to get a bond to seek financing for a revenue anticipation note that would fund the lease expense while we negotiate with the RG&E. At any time, we could just back out. If the board decided we don't want to do it, we don't have to do it. But that's what we're in the middle of right now. And so there's no resolution. We're still negotiating. And with regards to the RG&E, the steps we'd have to do with them is we'd have to get a license first, and then we'd have to get the lease, which needs to be approved by the Public Service Commission. So there are numerous steps that have to be taken. So we cannot project whether that cost is gonna be, gonna be incurred in October, or in
Yeah.
December, or in March of next year.
So the challenge is we're in a period of austerity given the 75 Monroe lawsuits and having to defend those. And it feels like we're increasing taxes, we're increasing head count, we're paying for some amenities that are important to our village, but in a time of austerity, those are the kinds of things that sometimes have to get sacrificed. So if you're asking for my recommendation, and nobody is, but I'm going to give it,
That was about two.
what I would recommend is that we pull out the full-time replacement for an assistant deputy clerk from the budget, which would save us with salary, payroll, taxes, benefits, all of that would save us tens of thousands of dollars, and then also reset the level on the trees back to the last year's budget level, which would save us another $9,000. Between those two, that would save us north of $50,000, and that feels more responsible to me than raising our taxes for a second year in a row to pay for these things.
Keep in mind, we wanted to be conservative with regards to the office staff. And you were in agreement when we determined that we were going to put that full-time position in, but we were going to do an evaluation of each position to determine whether we really needed that. But we couldn't do that in time for this. So we put the money in there, but that's not to say that we're going to hire somebody. We're gonna do an evaluation first, and the board is gonna have to determine whether we wanna do it or not.
And I would,
That's the background.
I agree. I would rather flip that and not fund that, and if we determine that we need a fourth full-time office staff person, that we would fund that for next year's budget.
I remind you of your statement when you voted no for the last budget, when you said, we do budget conservatively, so we determine what our expenses will be conservatively, and our revenue, we don't overshoot that. I'm just quoting you, and that's what we've done.
I agree to a point. The two issues to me are the 4 full-time office staff, and the doubling of the amount that we're spending on
I'd
trees
like
in
to
the
talk
time
to the
of
tree
our-
issue, because for the last 5 years, we've underfunded the tree category, and it was done to cut the budget. We're now creating a hole. This year, we have a number of large trees that have to be removed because they're dead, and they're going to be a potential safety concern. Someone's gonna be hurt unless we take those trees down. We need money in the budget to do that. It's a health, safety. We're causing the hazard if we do not properly address those trees. I think we also don't wanna get into a point where we were 20 years ago, where we have reconstituted our urban forest, and I think it's one of the most important factors, both in the aesthetic quality of the village as well as for traffic calming. It's a service that we have provided, and we're behind in our planning. We need to catch up, and that's why the decision was to restore funding to that category in this year's budget.
And I might add to that, our DPW superintendent came to us and recommended that we incur that expense to take down those trees, because they are a very serious safety hazard. So that was at the recommendation of our DPW superintendent.
And we've had an estimate on the cost.
We haven't had an estimate yet.
He did give us rough costs, yeah, he did.
Yeah,
I think also, and I know we will be doing an evaluation of each one of the positions in the office, it allows for some flexibility as far as hiring, for us to look at a combined position possibility. If we don't have it worked into the budget, we don't have options. So I think that was one of the things that Dorothea discussed with us, is because we don't know ahead of time what Mary's retirement plan will be and how we will plan to replace her. This sort of gives us options. And if we remove that from the budget line, we're removing options.
It also allows some flexibility with transitions, so there hopefully will be enough money in the budget to fund a training time where Mary can help familiarize whoever takes over that role with how she's organized the funds, how the program works, and the information can be transferred to the new person that takes over.
Current tax rate is 3.79,
Correct,
Correct.
and raising it to 4,
correct.
Correct.
so.
And the average tax rate of villages in New York State is, Frank?
There are 493 villages in New York State, and the average tax rate is $6.74 per thousand. Median is $5.69 per thousand. Those facts are from the state, New York State control.
Agreed, and it's not exactly, we've been over this, because it's not exactly apples to apples, because it's not taking in their county taxes, which are quite high in Monroe County. The state taxes, the school taxes for Pittsburgh, which our residents are also paying, are extremely high.
But that doesn't.
If you isolate the village taxes, sure, we are under. If you take the whole tax picture, we are really squeezed for taxes.
We don't control the school budget.
Sure.
And the cost of plowing snow is the cost of plowing snow regardless of what the school district does.
Agreed.
I think if you compare Pittsburgh Village to the average village in New York State, the level of amenities that we maintain, including holiday decorations, parks, trees, landscaping, and so forth, the promenade we have in the canal, for a very small village, we do a lot. The village has transformed over the last 25 years because we've created Shane Place. We've created a waterfront that's, one of, I think, the most successful in New York State. And so there is a cost in maintaining that. We have infrastructure that didn't used to exist, pavilions that need to be painted, lamp posts that need to be maintained. So I think we are indeed being responsible. 5 years ago, when we did a 30-year analysis of the fiscal trends in the village, the decision at the time was to gradually, we did a fairly thorough analysis of revenues and expenditures and made the determination that we needed to increase our revenue stream to support the current demands on village services. And many things have changed. The demands on our DPW have increased because they're doing more tasks than they used to do. The demands in the office have increased because we have technological requirements that didn't used to exist. We have a computer system that we didn't used to have. We have state filing requirements that we didn't used to exist that have been expanded. So the operations out of another unfunded state mandate. At the same time, state aid has either frozen or decreased. CHIPS aid
It's flatlined.
has been flat for the last 10 years, meaning in real dollars it's declined. The same thing has happened with AIM funding, which has really become a very small part of our budget. So, 15 years ago, 40% of our budget was funded by real estate taxes. Because of the decrease in state funding and other sources of revenue, that is now 48% today. I think the village board over the past years has done a very responsible job in being fiscally responsible and trying to hold the line in taxes. Every city and village in New York State is facing a fiscal crisis because the state has taken away the aid that used to provide significant funding to all of us. And so the fiscal picture that we've had here is very similar to every other village in Monroe County and almost every other village and city across New York State. I'm very proud to say that in spite of that, we still have a tax rate that's significantly lower than the average. The last time I checked, our tax rate was the same as the village of Lyman, which has the same population as Pittsburgh, but does none of the things that we do, provides none of the services that we do, nor do they have the amenities or parks that we do and that we maintain. So I think we've been doing, on a very small budget, we've been doing a lot. And so I think we spent a lot of time on this budget. I think the problem we made in the past is we haven't had an adequate contingency. And if there's one thing I learned in my 25 years as mayor, is you cannot predict everything that happens in a fiscal year. It's the nature of municipal business, is that there are unanticipated consequences, and the responsible thing, so we do not further deplete our reserves, is to have an adequate contingency. And in our last discussion, we added $10,000 to our contingency to give us an adequate cushion so we have a good chance of getting through the next fiscal year responsibly without a deficit.
And Bob, I agree with everything you said. I don't see, I want to go back to 4 full-time office staff.
Can we stop? You say 4 full-time, I'm sorry, really, I just want to make a
Dorothea,
correction. I really
Dorothea.
want to make a correction, and I'll be very quick.
Dorothy,
Can I just make this correction, please, Dan?
Dorothy,
You're saying
I'm
4
about to talk,
full-time
I'm
office,
about to talk about that.
there's 3 it'd be 3 administrative, 1 building inspector.
Okay, so we have, as I was about to say, we have 4 full-time office staff, and 3 of them are pros. We have a pro of a village clerk, we have a pro of a financial person, and we have a pro in a building inspector who really knows his stuff. The thought that we would need a 4th person, and I get that everybody has primary responsibilities there. Mary's primary responsibility are the books, and Steve's is to do the building inspector's work. But the thought that these seasoned veterans could also take on some responsibilities around the office is, I think, the reason why you hire seasoned pros. They can do a lot. And the thought that we would need another person seems irresponsible to us, to me, when really we spent the last 3 or 4 months really with 1.5, and it was hard on Mary, but I don't think we need 4.
Would anybody like to comment on that?
No, I thank you for your opinion. I have a different opinion, and I support the present budget, which includes the funding for office help, with the consideration that we will be evaluating, probably sometime this summer, to determine exactly what each job description includes and the most fiscally responsible way to move forward.
And as you recall, when we were talking about the potential of retaining another full-time person, we were also talking about doing an evaluation of what our office staff does and what we can farm out, for want of a better term. For example, the water bills. Sometimes when I come in, there's a stack of water bills and we're going through them. Maybe that can be done in a lockbox type environment with a bank. There are things that we are going to evaluate before we make the jump to hire another person. That's going to be justified, and you'll have a vote when we have to determine that.
I think it's another area because there are unknowns that we have to have a level of flexibility or we're gonna hamstring ourselves. I think Dorothea has suggested that perhaps, in hiring new people, we create positions that she can delegate less demanding tasks to make the salary levels lower. And there is a strategy here that as we move forward and we refine the plan, certainly as we find out more information about what Mary's retirement parameters are, and we won't know that until the end of May, then we can fine tune the plan. But if we underfund it, the market out there is challenging right now. We've had experience where we hired young interns, we trained them, and then they left. And that's created a hardship in the office. And although Mary did an outstanding job filling in for Dorothea while Dorothea was out on medical leave, there were things that simply didn't get done. And our level of service, some of our meetings weren't probably noticed. There were things that fell through the cracks simply because there wasn't enough time. And Mary worked overtime. She certainly put everything into it, but the office could not function the way it should function when we are down to that staff level. It just doesn't work because there's too much work to be done, and that's a fact. I was in here, I saw it, I saw Mary's challenges, she did her best, but it just wasn't humanly possible.
Bob, totally agree with you, but I don't think we need two people to catch that work that fell through the cracks.
Well, I don't think any decision has been made on the exact configuration of the office. I think what Frank has said is that we have all agreed that as we move forward, we're going to do an evaluation of each position to make sure that we are being financially responsible in funding the position and that we have a viable mix that will provide an adequate level of service to our residents in the office and be fiscally prudent. Do you agree, Frank?
I agree.
That's clear.
I agree.
Okay. Did you have a question, Lisa?
Just a quick question,
Sure.
so, you're putting the money in the budget, but that doesn't mean you're gonna spend it.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's what I'm hearing, okay.
Correct.
I
But
just
we're
wanted to,
I'm
in other
sorry.
words, you're doing the evaluation, you may or may not, or you may spend a little part of it, or depending on the conclusions you arrive at once you
But
do
we're
your
Right.
evaluation.
taxing people as if we are going to spend it. That's the challenge. So we're committing to
Yeah.
spend that money, and we're raising taxes to do so.
Okay,
And we may not spend that money, or it may get allocated
maybe it
somewhere
goes in
else.
the reserve.
Yeah,
Wow,
maybe it does.
there's options for.
And the reason I think that we have to be conservative in having enough money in the budget is because our reserves have been pared down to a level that we really don't want to dip into them anymore. And that's why in our prior conversation, the board decided to put enough money into the contingency so we have a reasonable chance of getting through the year. I think balancing all the factors here, the tax rate is not unreasonable. It's in line with other villages and certainly benchmark villages. Most of the benchmark villages that are similar to us, our tax rate is significantly lower. And if you go to a village like Skaneateles, and even when you remove the cost of their police department, which obviously we do not have, our tax rate is still significantly lower. And that's even more impressive because that's a larger village. They have a better economy of scale than we do, and we still have been able to efficiently deliver service here. And, you know, the other thing I would say about that is in our recent village survey, one of the highest levels of support of village services was for our DPW. People are very pleased with the services that we provide.
We're not talking about cutting the DPW.
Now, I understand that, but we have to have a sound village budget, because we're not in a position where we can.
And that's fine, so responsibly, in an effort to be transparent, allocate the money where you think it belongs. And with the fourth office staff person, I don't think that's allocating it properly if we're gonna use it for contingency. Then put it in contingency.
Well, we could do that. We could transfer it to, you know, and then we'd have enough money in the budget, but.
It doesn't have to be earmarked specifically for the office. We can take it out of the contingency fund if indeed we do need it for staff.
We could transfer it back into the employee fund if we needed to. You know, I think we tried to make a conservative projection because we haven't searched the market. We obviously are gonna have a different recipe in the office, and there's some unknowns as to how much we're gonna have to provide to adequately fund positions and get people that will stay here and do a good job.
In addition to that, one of the other things that we discussed regarding the contingency fund is if we are looking potentially adding some major amenities to the village in the way of enhanced crosswalks, the pedestrian safety plan, and the active transportation plan. If we want to, and to finish the pavilion, to do the pavilion. So those are just two of the grants that we have out there. If we want to be in an attractive position to fund a bond, to have a bond to do those projects, we have to have a good fund balance, and we also have to have a comfortable contingency fund in order to do that. So I think that was part of our deliberation when we talked about an incremental, conservative tax increase, is to be able to fund that as well. So that was part of what I used to deliberate about the increase in the tax.
One of the things in my mind when we were coming up with the funding for the administrative staff is one of the things we haven't had recently is grant administration. But from prior experience, every time we've had a New York State grant, there's a tremendous amount of administrative work that goes along with that. We have 3 outstanding grants right now. If we do go forward with them, somebody's gonna have to do that work. And in addition to, you know, the budgeting information has kept Mary busy almost full time, that you've got to think through to make sure that we have enough manpower in the office to actually do these tasks. Because with the grants, you have to meet certain deadlines, you have to get, you know, the accounting work done on the schedule, or you risk losing the money and forfeiting the grant that you've received.
So
We had,
to that end, there is no line item for to even talk about funding that grant that's sitting there to do the 4 travel spots. And I'm brand new, so I don't wanna jump into the budget process that you've been working on, but how do we tackle that? We can't this year, not with this budget.
Well, one
It's
of
not
the
reflected.
discussions we had is getting a ban or a bond.
Right, but that's not reflected in the budget either,
Well,
for
and,
any interest and anything that we
well,
might need. to
normally
go
you
forward.
wouldn't pay interest till after the first year of the bond or whenever it goes into effect. But that, and if it was, you know, just a cash flow issue to give us enough cash flow, and then we get the money back when we were reimbursed, so we could pay it off in short order. But again, that's another administrative task, and that's why we have put enough money in that category, so we have hopefully enough personnel that can handle administrating something like a bond. Because Dorothea has done it before, and it's a fair amount of work. Yes?
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand this. So, the money that's been set aside now in the budget for the 4th person, if it went into the contingency category, would that be amenable? Is that something, in other words, is it the placement of where the money is going?
Yeah,
I
because
mean, I'm
it's,
just trying to
it's,
understand,
right,
you know, because I feel like we're,
because it's bad budgeting to put it in a place where you're not intending
so,
to use it.
so if it goes into a contingency fund and it's pulled out for the very same position that we're talking about now potentially, that is more transparent and,
Yeah.
okay, no, I'm just
More
trying to
accurate.
really understand as I'm listening to
All right,
everybody's.
so we wanna make a motion to transfer money, from the, administrative category to the contingency.
It's also the benefits. So it's,
Yeah.
it's the head count plus the benefits.
Yeah.
I don't think we should do that now.
Okay.
I don't think we should do that.
And could you explain your rationale, Frank?
We have an opportunity now that we haven't had in years. We have a retiring treasurer, which provides us the opportunity, like I said before, to do an evaluation of our office staff, evaluation of their functions, and how we can do that better. And if we can do that, and if we find that we can do it better, that we don't need that person, we're not gonna spend the money. We're not gonna hire the person. But at this point, as you said, Dan, last year, we should project our expenses higher and our revenue lower. Proper budgeting.
Well, Frank, that doesn't.
Your
yes,
turn.
and-
No, wait.
But that doesn't, you just
Let me
copied
finish.
up by me, so let me answer that. So Frank, that doesn't mean you put an extra body in that you probably don't need.
We're not putting an
That's
extra
not that's not what I'm talking about on estimating high. That's padding the budget.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay, I disagree with you, but that's okay.
That's okay. Last point. We had an audit about 2 years ago, and the auditors cited the fact that our fund balance came down primarily because we underwent a lot of legal expense. And we had to develop a fund balance policy, which we did. And that policy says that if we go below a certain level, then we have to develop a program where we're going to contribute so much into the fund balance every year to bring it back to an acceptable level. We were cited for that. Not that we didn't have an acceptable fund balance, but we'd have to be careful
We'd have to have a policy.
and have to have a policy. We developed a policy, but we're close to the line. And they recommended that we do have a program where we could develop more to our fund balance so we could meet those expenses that we can't forecast. So that's your answer about the fund balance. We don't want to be where we are now.
Right, and I'm not
And-
disputing,
and-
I'm not disputing that.
in
Frank. I'm
fairness-
disputing that we would put money in headcount when what you're arguing is it should be in the fund balance.
I would like to give Dorothea an opportunity to talk about her vision of staffing and why we ended up with the numbers that we did in terms of office staff.
While I was out, Mary looked at her retirement, and she asked, so the projections she put in for transition, our numbers she came up looking reasonably at the cost of a village treasurer. So we gave the board that option, if we're looking to replace Mary. And I will state publicly, Mary is underpaid in comparison to all the other villages. This village is made out like a bandit with her tenure, okay, stating that. To replace her, it is gonna cost more money. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I have functioned in the past as a clerk, deputy treasurer, I've done both. So I'm comfortable taking on both positions in that line, which would save the village money. I'm not saying raise my salary at all, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, look at the two lower positions, create a deputy treasurer and a deputy clerk. That gives us the separation of duties we need per state comptroller. Now, those positions would make less. My goal, my overall goal, wasn't to increase the budget line quite as much, but that gives me wiggle room. I'm anticipating and I'm hoping I can keep it to the same numbers. What I'm also looking at is The village has functioned with a lot of part-time staffers. I love my part-time staffers. The problem is, it really isn't reasonable for all positions. We have Linda that comes in at 1 o'clock. At some point, Linda can say to me, I'm done, I've had a great time here, I'm ready to relax and chill. I need to be able to cover that position. I won't have to worry about that when I have 3 full-time administrative people, because we can take on that position. We already got that covered. I'm looking at my records clerk, who unfortunately is aging, and eventually she might come to me too and say, I'm done. She's having a surgery, which I just went through, and she's already gonna be out for 3 months. I need staff to be able to cover all that. When I have full-timers that can train them in those duties, we don't have to go back and fill those part-time positions. So down the road, making these changes now help fill these positions, and we will not incur additional costs, which will reduce the staff salaries. And again, when you talk going down to 2 office people, which would be me and Mary, I don't count Steve. Steve's fabulous in his position, but he is not for doing all the administrative stuff. That's why I don't count him as one of my administrators. It gives us, sorry, I'm trying to keep focused here. It gives me a lot of leeway to deal with the public. It also gives us time. If currently I take a vacation, Mary's running the gamut, trying to do everything and keep everything going. And that covers any special meetings, any of the board's needs, along with all her treasury needs. If Mary's out, I'm trying to jump through the same hoop she's jumping in reverse. It just spreads the knowledge further when you create a deputy clerk and a deputy treasurer, and then you have me overseeing. Those duties can continue whether I'm there or one of them is missing. We have the coverage we need for all positions. That's my goal, so we don't have a shortfall of services and the needs of the boards.
Thanks.
And we do not have an administrative staff of 4 people. We have an administrative staff of 3 people and a building inspector and a code enforcement officer and a fire person. And we can't expect him to be filling in only in an emergency situation, but we can't expect him to be one of our administrative staff. He has his own job.
Correct. And I don't anticipate him, yes, will he grab the phone if we're busy? Absolutely. But is that his primary concern? No, he's got people and duties he needs to take care of.
Exactly.
That you're paying him a good.
And I think we're doing the responsible thing, because as we move forward and we get more information about the schedule of Mary's retirement, we're going to refine a task list of all the things, the work that needs to be done in the office, apportion that to staff positions, and hopefully come up with a sensible staffing plan for the office. And I think, we're not quite sure what that's gonna be yet, but I think the process will make itself evident. So, I think we have done the responsible thing, because there's so many unknowns. Yes, Steve?
I just want to mention something in regards to this position or the office, that some of the plans that we've talked about coming down the line here for some changes in some of the things in the village is going to, what we implement is going to create a little more load on the office staff, that I won't, with those implementations, I won't be able to cover all of that administrative work with the rental registration and the fire inspections, they're all little tasks. So I will have to rely on some office staff at some point for some of that work. I won't be able to cover it all and do the rest of the tasks associated with the job.
Thanks, Steve.
I just for the benefit of the audience here, in creating Steve's position, we've gone from a part-time building inspector to a full-time building inspector, fire marshal. But we've also, with that, fees that formerly went to the town of Pittsburgh are now going to fund in part in the position. And in searching for a building inspector, it's taken us approximately 3 years, because there are a dearth of qualified people in the field. And to find somebody that had the right qualifications, we really had to go to a full-time position, because they just weren't available in a part-time position. And we need somebody who's qualified.
Have
Any-
you found him yet?
Yes, I think we're very happy, Steve.
Are those fees projected in the budget, or is it just, you just don't know, so you can't do that yet?
We don't know, as much as we could, we've tried to project them, but time will tell. Fees are, you never know what's gonna come into the planning board, and if you get one large project, it will greatly change the amount of revenue that you see. One of the changes that we made is instead of charging a flat fee for, say, site plan review, is doing it on an hourly basis. So for a large project, the fee is commensurate with the amount of hours of staff time that's dedicated to the project review. And that should not only be, I think, more fair to the applicants, it will also raise more revenue for the village. Okay, any other discussion? Yes.
I have a question about a different line item.
Sure.
Should I hold that?
No.
Do that now?
We can
Okay.
answer now.
Because it ties into, you know, looking for some of these dollars. I was just curious, on the $44,200 line item for lower boards attorneys, one of the things that in that audit that Frank mentioned, that we got criticized on was seeking competitive pricing for professional services. And I was just curious if we have sought out other attorneys or law firms in terms of that line item. You know, is it something that we have put out to a competitive bid?
The choices for legal representation for the two boards, the PZBA and the APRB, those choices are made at the discretion of those boards. And when they have selected, and Susan Lona is a representative of the PZBA here tonight, they were looking for a specific expertise in environmental law. And that's, as far as legal representation, there's really a limited number of people in the area that have that expertise. But they did go through a process when they selected the attorney that's currently representing them. And that's standard procedure.
And how long ago was that? So how long have we had the same attorneys?
2 years, I think. Is that right, Susan?
Oh, 3.
3 years. 3
I know.
years. 3 years.
Yeah, plus, I mean, good point. I mean, the casework is ongoing, so there's a lot of, you know, institutional knowledge that we have that equity now
Yeah.
in that council.
Generally with municipal attorneys, if you talk to other municipalities, there generally is a long tenure because the attorneys do tend to develop an institutional knowledge for the parameters of that municipality. And, you know, if you talk to the town of Pittsburgh, that's the same situation there. They've had their attorney, I think about the last 7 years, they've used Robert Cable. There was another question in the back, yes?
I just had one question, Dave Marshall. Can I provide a chart of village tax rates across New York State?
Sure, absolutely.
I had downloaded from the Office of State Comptroller all the village tax rates throughout New York, and then just put them in a chart format.
Thank you.
So it's easier for all of us and or the villagers to see and understand, I think that, the degree by which, pass that around, the degree by which the village of Pittsburgh's tax rate is noticeably lower on a generally evenly sloping upward line. And then in subsequent charts, I removed the tails, the bottom 5% and the top 5%. And then in the last one, I normalized it for property values that were plus or minus 100 million from the property values of the village. It doesn't get into specifics as to the degree of services provided, but it is a useful tool of understanding relative to where we are, relative to the rest of all the villages across all of New York State.
This confirms our own research, thank you.
Yes.
And the question is what we talked about earlier, does it factor in everything, school taxes, county taxes?
Well, I should know
Well,
that.
that would be true of all villages.
That's,
So, but some of the villages are paying quite a bit less in terms of what their county taxes are. So if you look at the tax burden on our individual residents just as residents, that would complete the picture. So yes, the village portion of it may be lower, but the the overall tax burden on our residents is high when you factor in schools
Are you
and county.
suggesting though that if the school tax is unreasonably high, the village should bear the burden by providing fewer services at lower tax
Right.
Uh, yes and no, it depends. It's our job to responsibly budget
Yes.
and to spend our money and to be stewards of your money, the villagers, responsibly.
I concur.
And to protect the village
Yes.
financially.
Anyway, thank you.
Yes, Elisa?
I think you guys have done a really great job. I think you guys have really tried to vet and really push and pull and prod and look at every line item, and you're asking good questions, you're all asking good questions and giving good answers, but at the end of the day, if you feel that your taxes are too high, I would go talk to the school board. You know, people live in Pittsburgh for a reason, and I don't see people moving out of the village because taxes are too high in the village. I see houses selling like
Yeah.
hotcakes, because people wanna live in our village, because we have a great village.
And it's a really fair point.
So
Elisa.
I think, Dan, I think the overall tax burden, I understand that, but I don't think we need to hold our municipality responsible for decisions made by other entities in our community. Whether it's the school
Agreed.
board or the town
Yes.
or the fire department, you're in charge of what's going on here right now in this room for our village.
But the elephant in the room is that we're in a time of spending almost 9% of our budget on defending lawsuits.
Because we
And-
took an
and-
oath
and
of
that-
office to uphold New York State
and I'm
law
not-
and the village
I'm
code,
not
and
saying
we
we
don't have a
shouldn't,
choice.
Bob, I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. It's an extraordinary expense.
Agreed.
And we said yes to every single wish list item that anybody had in the budget. We said no to nothing.
But
Yeah.
does that mean it's a bad idea?
What about the grants?
Where's Zach? Zach will speak to the fact
South Street.
that we
Yeah,
didn't do South Street, we didn't do Sutherland
we
Street.
pushed the lease off for the
That was
truck.
on the list.
We are kicking a lot of stuff down the road, and eventually it's gonna catch up, and I don't think we talk about that much. But eventually we are gonna need a big increase versus little ones along the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Peter?
Not having been to all budget hearings, but listening to the arguments that were made at the last one, which I believe was the final, packaging of this plan, it seemed to me that the board had done a very responsible job in terms of, taking a conservative approach really to spending, and the proposed increase is one that, on average, I think you determined to be about $36 per household, which includes enough money in a reserve, maybe to do some things that need to be done. So I applaud the board for the work that they've done on this, and as one who will likely receive that $36 increase, I'm all in.
Thank you.
Yeah, how many lattes is that?
Correct.
We want to be careful with that, because you can rationalize away a few $100s, $300, $400. That's not the best way to go about with a budget as far as trying to reduce the amount of the increase to be, just some nominal amount that, hey, why not do it $100? We'll all throw in a little bit of money.
Yeah, but I think
So it's just, it's not the best way.
But I
to
don't
approach
think
the
that's
budget.
been our process. Our process has been to look at the
No,
services that we
I'm just talking
provide.
about the discussion right now, Bob, I'm not talking about the process. And down, as far as if we're kicking things down the road, like you said, the tree budget, why has it been underfunded for 5 years?
Because there was an interest in limiting the tax growth and to, being as fiscally responsible as possible. And that was one of the things that we felt we could let go. But I think we've done, every year we've updated our tree inventory, and I think we're where we've got, as we said earlier, some trees that need to be taken down, some significant expenses. Yes?
Also, with just talking about the trees, we've had extreme weather. We've had some serious windstorms, and considering the way things are going, I don't know that that's gonna abate.
Correct. In fact,
So
this
if you have
year,
that trees, you need to take care of them.
this year is the windiest year we've had in over 35 years in Rochester.
Let me add that we have not said yes to everything. We have said no to a lot of things. There was a policy, somewhat of a policy, years ago that we wouldn't replace any of our equipment And in 2013-14, we were in pretty bad shape. We had some equipment that was pretty old and needed to be replaced, and we couldn't do it all. This year, we have a truck that is leaking in the cabin. We've even used that stuff that guy uses riding in a boat that cuts the boat in half. We've even used that, and that still didn't work. But we are gonna use that truck. We're gonna use it until June, maybe the end of the summer, because we're gonna purchase a new truck, and we're gonna finance it, and the payments, if the board approves it, will be in arrears, so they won't be due until the next fiscal year. Suffice to say, we've had to replace equipment that should have been replaced a long time ago. And I give you one example. We are responsible for the sewage lines at Wood Creek. And when, in 2013-14, when I came in, if the power failed at Wood Creek, we would have to pull a power generator from the DPW garage all the way to Wood Creek to supply the power to run the sewers. And that piece of equipment wasn't even roadworthy, and it was run on propane, and the propane company wouldn't come to put propane in it because it wasn't legal. And we were faced with that. We have a new generator in there. That was one of the things that one of the things that we did. And we've had to replace plows, we've had to replace that little vehicle that you see going around the village. So there are some other pieces of equipment that we would like to have that we're not buying because of our fiscal responsibility.
Very much, thank you, sir. Just one last thing for everybody. I did just want to show you what we've been doing in a process on this, which I think has really worked this year. These are all the line items, and essentially what we did was we looked at what we've spent year to date, we projected what the spending would be through the end of the fiscal year, we looked at the 18 budget, we looked at the 19 budget, and then we looked at the differences between them. The greens are anything more than 10% that we cut, the reds are anything more than 10% that's an increase, and then we were able, that's what shone a light on the things that we ended up talking a lot about, and that's where we know that the headcount expenses were higher, and this is where we know that we made some cuts on the safety inspection side of things, and that was justifiable because we have a new full-time person. So that's how we brought out of the budget where the big changes were, and that allowed some fruitful conversation. So thanks to the board for those things.
Okay, all right. Moving on, we have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
What was the motion? I forgot what it was.
To table the discussion on the budget to our hearing on April 30th.
That's right. I will second that.
All in favor? Okay. Next item, we have a special permit to consider a special use permit for the Oak Room at 9 South Main Street. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing and invite the applicant up to the table. Welcome.
The salt and patience.
Good to see you again. All right, would you like to tell us about the Oak Room?
So, as we talked about the last meeting, I'm the consultant agent, and this is the applicant, Timmy Parnell. And Mr. Parnell proposes to buy the existing business located at 9 South Main Street, known as The Lounge, and operate it exactly the same. Okay, serving a variety of special cold and hot appetizers with legal beverages. And he will name it the Oak Room. The hot appetizers will be prepared the same as they are now, using only electric or induction heat. There will be no gas or open flame. Only ambient music will be played in the background.
Not live.
No, not soft. Yeah, okay, last time I said soft was it.
Okay.
The hours of operation will remain the same, Tuesday through Saturday, 5 PM to 1 AM. Since the business won't open till 5 PM, there will always be ample public parking available. The refuse containers that are presently used will be adequate for the little refuse that will be generated. In summary,
And you have an agreement with who to use their refuse, how are you gonna handle refuse?
the owner of the building,
Mhm.
who's next door to the kitchen.
Yep.
We have a permission.
Okay, to use
Because
it,
they presently own this building,
okay.
this space. And presently, the bottom line is it's gonna be exactly the same,
Mhm.
and nothing's gonna be changed.
Except for the name.
The old room.
Do
Okay.
you have to apply for a new liquor license?
Yes. And we had submitted a letter, which we talked about,
Mhm.
So
last
we have
meeting.
the extension or the waiver?
Yes.
temporary
Yeah,
waiver.
we've even waited beyond until we got the approval, and then we'll submit the
Then
application.
just submit your application, okay. And the patio, do you have any plans for the patio?
That we talked about that we were gonna check with the inspector to make sure that it's in compliance with, for what he's looking for.
To do exactly
To
what
do it
they
the right way,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, very good. Do you mind if I open it up to public comment? Does anyone wish to comment on the application for the Oak Room? We already
And,
did. We already did. What's it?
There's a hand up.
Oh, yes, hand in the back.
I'd love to see it open again, I'm glad we're here, and ready to move ahead. Clarification just on one thing, the owner of the building is
Michael
not
Newcomb.
who they said. Mr.
Right.
Newcomb's own the building,
Yeah. Okay.
and they're buying a business, and that business owns the lease on that space.
Yes,
I assume it
I
comes.
misspoke on that one.
Okay.
And,
You're right.
and also, with regard to hours of operation, just from my own perspective, I'd love it if you opened earlier in the day. I mean, seriously.
We just might.
Okay,
Peter, to be clear, the application is clear that Mr. Newcomb is the owner.
I'm sorry?
The application itself, the paper is clear that Mr. Newcomb is the owner, just to be clear.
all right, any other discussion from your, Steve?
I was
Yes.
curious, I'm not totally familiar with the history, but was there issues before with Monroe County Health with this facility and the preparing of any food within that building?
Only because originally it was proposed as a full kitchen, and there wasn't adequate egress for that, and that's why they went to the electronically heated food instead of.
Which will all be done upstairs,
No.
Downstairs.
downstairs?
Yeah, all the plans were submitted at the original permit, and everything was approved.
Okay,
So we're going based on all the approvals that were originally done.
all right.
Okay.
So there's no carrying of food between the kitchen and the lounge? There's no carrying of food between the kitchen and the open?
There'll be no connection, you know,
I
it'll all
think
be
maybe that's
prepared
what
in
the
your
question was.
facility.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions from the public? If there are none, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second? All in favor?
I don't
I'm
think
sorry,
anyone
who
seconded,
seconded?
I'll
Oh,
second
yeah.
it.
Okay,
You
thank
went
you.
so fast.
Sorry. Because the application is, as is presented, is exactly the same in density,
Intensity of use?
occupant capacity, and configuration as the prior business, I don't see that there are any other additional adverse impacts. And so I will make a motion in favor of approval of the application as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, you're approved.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your patience.
Our next agenda item is a special permit for Simply Crepes. Gary, would you like to come up?
Good evening.
Welcome.
Trustees. It's great to be back again. It's been a while since I've been here, and I wanted to first off thank you all for your support over the last 16 years and for your wisdom to give us, grant us a special use permit 16 years ago. Over the last 16 years, we've been fortunate in growing our business, where we now have 3 locations. Shane Place, of course, is our original location, one that is near and dear to our hearts, and of course the one in Canada in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our plans are to continue growing our business. We're fortunate in the sense that we continue to have a fairly high demand for our business services and food that we provide to the community, which is great. And in large part, I thank you for having the wisdom to grant us that special use permit 16 years ago. We are fortunate, I guess, in the sense that here we are, we have an opportunity to expand the use of our existing facilities. We've leased space from the Collins family for 16 years. The upper level, which is the main restaurant that you're all familiar with, and then the lower level, which has for the last 16 years been a commissary for that location, for the Pittsburgh location, as well as for Frontier Field, festivals, Canandaigua, the library, and we have that one open and so forth. So it's been an important approved kitchen according to our County Department of Health for the last 16 years. It's transformed. We had, of course, for a little while there, we had Stoll Juice and was sharing our space for the last 3 of the last 4 years. And we did have a cooler that was actually leased out to, which was sold, and the space being leased out to Lock 32. So we did help that business continue, I guess, build their knowledge and theory success, which is awesome. But now we're looking at turning that into a new event space. Our goal is to expand the use of that space and turn it into an event space that I think is going to take a historic building from our village and now expose some really cool architectural features of the history of that building and have it available for individuals to enjoy. On so many cool architectural features that we've been able to uncover over the last several weeks as we've proceeded with some important construction there. We've sandblasted walls, and there and behold, we have behind these painted white walls are now beautiful stones. And from what I understand, the people that were doing the sandblasting said these stones were most likely from when they excavated the canal. And so these are historic stones of this village. The cool thing is also we found an old barn door that was stuck behind some of my shelving that was used on the entrance from Shane Place down to the lower level. We now have a barn door that is really cool, and today's architecture, indoor architecture, shows a lot of barn features, and we now have an original barn door that we're going to be able to accentuate and highlight in the space. At some point, should we get approval from the board here to expand the use there, we will eventually come back to APRB to make some changes to the entrance, which again will allow us to accentuate some architectural features of the barn and expose some hidden treasures that are behind an existing barn door. We've sandblasted beams that expose beautiful wooden structures that support the barn. There are some cool things about this building that we're just uncovering, and we're very excited to share with the community. We're looking at creating a space that will allow us to hopefully house and host bridal showers, baby showers, potential corporate meetings. We're going to have crepe making classes that we have a lot of demand for. And we do also do some wine pairing meals that we've done one recently with Dr. Frank. We did one earlier this year with Herman Weimer. Very successful events. They bring people from outside the community here to the village of Pittsburgh, and it's really cool. We want to continue doing those types of things. So that's what we propose on doing. We'd love your support to continue doing this. I understand we're gonna need a public hearing for this, so this purpose of my chatting with you about this right now is to express gratitude and ask for your support to take it to the next level and hopefully get your support in a expanded special permit.
Yeah.
Comments from the board?
I visited the space, and it's all quite fabulous. I think it's gonna be a real asset. The things that I spoke with Pierre about was, the parking and the trash. Those are things that will be of, interest to the board as we look at your special use permit. So do you want to address those two?
Sure, yes, and I thank you for raising those, because obviously those are very important elements of any use or expansion of a use and so forth. We currently have, we use I'll call it the community trash pen that the Collins have established, which is behind the coal tower. We have used those facilities for pretty much all 16 years that we've been in place. We fully expect to continue using those facilities with the expanded use. There will be some additional trash without question when we have events. So those will be, I've already talked to Jenny Collins about the potential additional burden that will cause to the facilities. You know, if it gets really busy, we'll have to go to multiple pickups and so forth, so additional pickups. But the plan is to use what's there existing. So there's, that's fully expected.
There was an exposed dumpster. In
Oh.
other words, it was not,
Yes,
you know which one I mean.
yes, I know.
What do you
So
think?
I have a lot of concerns about the number of dumpsters that exist along that whole parking strip. And I have expressed my concern with Jenny Collins, and she agrees. She's approached there's a smaller one that's just outside the area that we propose would be the entrance. And it's currently being operated by True Salon. So Jenny's talked to her, and I've contacted Katie, who owns True Salon, and we have, I'm glad to report to you that we have actually secured an agreement where she's actually going to remove that. And basically the agreement is that we will share, Simply Craig's and True Salon will share 2 totes, one which will have the recyclables, one which will have trash. My staff, at least once a day, if not twice a day, or more often, takes trash from the building to the trash pen. We will take the trash that True Salon generates as well. So that we have that agreement in place now. We're excited about that.
And it'll clean up the entrance for the new
Yes,
use.
it was a dumpster that's not
There's
screened presently.
One dumpster that's not screened is gonna be gone. So I'm like, yes, one less. It'd be nice if I could figure out how to create an agreement with my neighbors at the bike shop and so forth. It would be nice to hide those somewhere.
And clean those up.
And clean those up, yes. I'll make that my mission to keep working on that.
One other issue is, there is a fence that the Collins put up that has fallen over.
Yes.
That one needs to be repaired.
So just so I have talked to Andrew Dombrowski, Jenny's son, and I've offered my services to help him put up additional fencing, or fix some of the
Okay,
fencing that's
great.
broken. Because I agree with you, again, part of what this is going to become an entrance for an event center.
Right.
It is my interest as well as the
Get it
village
cleaned
interest
up.
to make sure that it always looks good.
Yeah.
And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that entrance looks to top
Presentable.
all the time.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Parking, let me address parking for a second.
Okay, yes, yeah, thank you, Chris.
So clearly, parking is always a challenge, has been, and thank God it is a challenge.
Yes.
I mean, it's one of those things that as a business, you wish you didn't have, but on the other hand, you're really glad you have. Because if you didn't have it, then maybe you don't have enough customers to support your business.
Right.
We're fortunate enough as well as not only do we have a good business that people want to go to, so does the Coal Tower, so does Aladdin's, so does Black Beauty Juice, so does True Salon, and we have a number of really cool businesses, mostly clay, that are just very successful, viable businesses, been there for a long time. And we're very, very fortunate for that. The reality is, we also have a tremendous resource in the canal that people love to walk and bike on. For many, many years, Ted Collins would be in his car and he would monitor traffic. And it was legendary that he would do that. God bless his soul. I mean, it's one of those things that you kind of, quietly I cheered on the actions he took, because I knew at the end of the day he was trying to protect space for my customers that ultimately resulted in me being able to continue to pay his rent. On the other hand, it was like, well, I really want the walkers to come and people that are biking. So we're in a really, really tough situation here. We've got desirable space that a lot of people want to use. Jenny Collins tells me that she has ample parking to accommodate increased use of our space. I mean, it's a question, we're most likely going to have our special events will happen during the week. They will happen on the weekends. That's when they happen. Of course, on the weekends is when we have most of our demand on our parking. We, as a business, will do obviously everything we can to facilitate parking for our customers. If we need to provide them with valet parking, and which means that we have people that take the cars to a farther reach of the RG right away, where we'll take them out we'll do what we need to do to support the business. But in our understanding right now is that the property that Jenny Collins controls, if it was only parking used for her tenants, it would be adequate. But it's not. So I believe it's adequate, but we're challenged with bikers and other individuals that use the parking pretty routinely. And,
One of the problems that was created was that at one point Ted had leased more of the RG right away than his current lease extends to, so he had more parking than he has now. But as long as we have that flex space available, I don't see it, as long as people are willing to walk down the right away, I don't see it as a problem.
Right.
There was also some talk with Carrie Degenhardt. She offered her Robert's Kitchen parking lot as an option for after hours once Robert's Kitchens is closes for the day.
Oh, okay.
And so you might want to speak with her regarding some agreement, if we had it in writing, that's always helpful.
Okay.
And to also agree to the option of valet parking.
Right.
That would go very far.
Valet parking seems like it might make sense given where this entrance location is and where people might have to park.
Is there any plan to change the lighting in the rear, since you have that as your entry?
Oh, yes, well, at some point I'll bring the proposal to the, actually, I have a proposal that's already in the, our goal is in the entranceway that we're proposing is going to be to put in a shed roof, just like the shed roof that's over by, what was formerly occupied.
The porch that's already
porch,
there.
right. So we're going to look at making exactly the same, we don't want to make anything that's different. The entrance, the doorway, we're going to propose to go with a wooden doorway that's very similar to what Simply Crepes currently has in their front doorway. The barn door that's currently on the right-hand side of the entrance.
You're shifting to the
We're going
other
to
side.
shift to the left-hand side and actually close the door so that it basically hides the one door that is no longer there. Because there's two steel doors.
Can I insert an architect's opinion, just to
Sure,
your
yes,
entrance? I think it would set your entrance off a little bit if the posts that you have in the drawing are 4x4 and they match what's on the porch next to you. But I think it would look a hell of a lot better if you used a thicker post that it more reflects the barn character of the building.
Okay.
And it would also give, sort of a signature that this is a special place.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I think it
So
could.
a 6x6 or.
The other thing is if you do your roof, like say this is your canopy, this is the eave. Underneath there's usually a beam, and then you want posts I'd make them just thicker, simple posts. You could take a 6x6 and trim around it to get just a thicker profile. It's gonna look like it belongs. But this is, if you look on any porch around the village, you'll see a beam here. And if you looked at the end profile, that would look like, I'm exaggerating the slope of the roof here, it would look like this with a piece of trim and this might be vertical siding up in here like that.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
But that would sort of dress it up a little bit,
Yeah.
and I think you want people to be able to find your entrance.
Yes.
This would give it a little more identity.
Okay, I like that. Lighting was the question, so we're gonna, now get back to lighting. Basically, I showed, I think in the APRB,
Gooseneck, I think you
Gooseneck,
showed a gooseneck
gooseneck.
one.
I actually subsequently, I talked to my electrician, he said, you know, Pierre, you don't wanna go with the gooseneck, because what are you gonna hang them on to? Well, you know, so they're going to be that shape, but they may be hanging from the ceiling.
Sure. Yeah, that's nice, because
So-
it'll be downcast,
Right.
and it'll put a glow on the
Right,
entrance so
right.
people can find it.
Right, we don't want to cast,
Right.
we want to cast into the space, so it's
Yeah.
going to be, so the thought is that they may come off the ceiling as opposed to off the post.
Nice idea,
Okay.
nice idea. Good. Okay, now we
Yeah.
need to set up.
Yes.
oh,
Just,
sorry, Dan.
one comment, it sounds great, but one of the challenges the previous tenant, I'm telling you something you probably already know. One of the challenges the previous tenant faced was, signage, because the sidewalk is really narrow there in the front of the building, you know this
Right.
already. And she had a challenge with letting people know that it was there. So I'm sure you've thought of signage and how people would know it's in the back there.
Right,
And lighting and entranceways would all help, it's just something to consider.
yeah, thank you, yeah, that's, our thought in terms of signage, is our initial thought is basically the sign that we have similar to what we have on the front of our main level restaurant, is similar sign that we would put on the wall downstairs. So in terms of its visibility sideways, we're not going to have a blade coming off the building, which would be the ideal thing for us. The thought is it's going to be up against the building. Our thought at this point is in terms of the presence of that location and how we're going to market that. The location will be marketed primarily as event space to our customers. Customers that come into our restaurant will hear about our event space. People that frequent it, and what we found with our Canandaigua store is actually people that have visited our store and received our services, it's word of mouth.
Mhm.
So I get 40 women that come in for a bridal shower, and next thing you know, I booked 2 or 3 more bridal showers, they like what we've done. That's how we're going to grow that business.
Yeah, you're not looking for walk-ins.
No, and then people will know where the space is, because it would be, we're still trying to come up with the name of it. Like in Canandaigua, we have a yellow room, and we cleverly call it the yellow room. And we have a green room that's cleverly called the green room. This one's lower level, so we're not sure if we're gonna call it lower level, or we're gonna call it the cafe, or.
Cave.
Or cave, the cave would be that. It will have, we currently, and for the last 16 years, have been storing our wine in one of the corner closets. We have decided that we are going to feature wine in this location. We were going to have a nice 177 bottle wine cooler and a wine rack that will hold about 120 bottles of red wine. Glass racks and so forth. That will be a very cool feature, that when people come into the space, they will see a wine, I guess a bit of a wine rack featuring. We will most likely have wine bottles on the walls as well. It's going to feel like a wine cellar. We're not going to call it the wine cellar, I don't think, but we're still coming up with names. So if anybody has names, please send them our way. We couldn't figure that one out yet. That's
One of the ways to access this facility is that one stairwell going down.
Okay.
Through the building?
That's a really good question.
Because that could be dialed up a little bit.
So the one stair, oh, I know, oh, okay, yeah, yes, very good, okay, yes, the stairwell that's in the middle of the building.
Yeah.
Yes, and you know, I've had some wonderful conversations with the Collins this year, absolutely wonderful conversations, and one of the things that actually did change, I don't know if you've noticed, but there used to be a door at the top of that stairwell. It got messed up in one of the windstorms this year, and so Andrew took the door out, and he was planning to put it back up, and I said, Andrew, look at the opening, doesn't need a door. And he said, well, what do you, and I said, you can see the door frame, then you see this extra piece, about a foot, maybe 15 inches, somebody built this on. If we take that out, then you just basically create a full opening, which is what it was originally intended to be. So he took it out, and it's beautiful. Now, so the space has, when you walk through it, it gives you a much, it doesn't feel like you're confined when you come up to the upper level. So that was one thing that just aesthetically feels better. Now, the stairwell itself, yes, Andrew has admitted we are going to paint and beautify that whole stairwell so that it's much better than what it is right now. I'm not, those fancy bricks are going, they're not bricks, they're basically painted on, they're gone.
Yeah.
It will be cleaned up, it's gonna look much better.
Great.
Good.
The stairwell that we use, there's from the Shane Place level,
Service stairwell.
going downstairs. The restaurant is going to continue using that because we have, I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's just my phone.
do I have to stop?
No.
Okay, time's up. That will continue to be used for storage for the restaurant. We do a lot of catering, on-site catering and so forth. And then not only that, shaping dishes and other equipment that we're gonna use in the event space, we'll need to store out of the public view and so forth. So that will be a storage area.
Gotcha. All right, we need to make a motion to go to public hearing. Dorothea, what's the date? May 14th? I'll make a motion to go to public hearing to consider the alteration of the special permit for Simply Crepes on May 14th. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank you, Pierre, good seeing you.
How did the filming go with the,
Oh, God.
was it the Food Network who was
It
there?
was, so yeah, okay, so the actual Fabio Viviani tried the rugby crepe in our Pittsburgh location in March of last year. He absolutely fell in love with it, and he nominated us for the show. And we actually filmed the segment in Canandaigua on September 21st, and of course now it's been viewed on April 8th. And again, I credit this board for giving us the nod to become a business. And without your approval 16 years ago, that opportunity doesn't come to us. So again, I'm truly grateful to this board for supporting us and giving us that
You
opportunity.
picked a good location.
You picked a great village.
Thank you. You made good crepes.
Thank you.
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
Okay, next item we have is a non-municipal permit for the Pittsburgh Garden Club.
The Garden Club asked me to represent it. This is their annual sale that's helping behind the library. It's just consistent with their actions.
I'll make a motion to approve the application of the Pittsburgh Garden Club for their annual plant sale in accordance with the 2018 conditions.
By May 18th, but please wait for the 45.
With waiver of the 45-day notice. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, next item we have is the HPRV consultant agreement. Comments, questions?
The only addition I had, thank you for putting this together, it's very good. You have a not to exceed, which is really helpful, but explicitly put it that it's time and materials. Time and materials not to exceed $4.
Okay,
Because otherwise, it could be seen as a fixed bid.
I agree. I would make a motion to approve the request by the APRV for an HPV consultant, and I would add Dan's suggestion to the approval.
Did you get that?
Yep.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, I also put together a template for all boards to use.
Yep.
So assuming the same change would be made in that. I don't know that you have to bless it, or you don't, if you have to vote on it, but you could bless it. So the board, other boards could use this template.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Aye. Second.
Renee was first. Okay.
I got one in there.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have a request for a PZBA consultant.
They're not here. I received these consultant requests from Justin.
Okay.
There was an additional one for Q-Tech that I sent out this afternoon, so you had two separate ones.
I'll make a motion to approve the applications from PZBA.
Do you have to reference the procurement policy so that, do we have to reference the procurement policy? Because the process that I understand it is that you're going to approve the consultant, and then we're going to use the form that we just talked about to approve specific jobs to be conducted by the consultant. So are we at the procurement policy approval stage?
The board approves the consultant.
Right.
And then the board requests funding for the consultant from the Board of Trustees. So what we have here is a proposal, but we don't have a request to
Okay.
fund it.
All right, I thought that was a request, okay. All right, I mean, the way I understand, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I thought you're gonna approve an umbrella consultant using your procurement policy, and then on a per
You're just
job,
gonna write a template.
per job basis using the template here, you'll approve the per job
Each
basis.
request.
Yeah,
Right, yeah, but this will work,
okay.
this will work.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
It doesn't have to be written up in a template form, the PCBA request? So this
I
is
don't
just a
think this is-
proposal at
Yeah,
this
yeah,
point?
this is a proposed consultant
Okay,
for them to use.
I see.
Right, and then they send,
They'll send an individual request for each job that uses this consultant.
I
to
see.
the board
Got it.
requesting the funding for each job.
Utilizing that template.
Got it, got it. So do we have to approve anything? I guess not, because they choose the consultants.
Well, I think that the template ties into this board's approval of that consultant.
So we wait to the template before we,
I think it's a two-step process, as I understand it. This is what we went through with the APRB,
okay.
is that you approved the use of the consultant using the procurement policy, and then on a per-job basis, you'll approve the per job.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the use of Mary Adelaide Scipione, landscape architects, and Q-Tech Engineering, lighting engineers, in accordance with the village's procurement policy. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So the question is whether or not this ought to happen again as part of the annual meeting.
Yes, organizational meeting.
Well,
And that's what I meant, organization.
We've approved it, so we could automatically add it to the organizational meeting script,
Right, I think that's probably the right way to go.
okay?
And then the template will change to be as approved in the organizational meeting.
I thought you and Dan were working on a new template.
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
But this superseded it. This did everything that we were gonna do.
Yeah, I think it addresses the
You
issue.
got payment terms in there, you got.
Everything's in there.
You got everything in there, it's good, thank you.
Job completed. Next issue, village survey. I talked to Bill McBride. He would be willing to come. He suggested that we write a press release with the key findings of the survey to throw out. The idea here is to maximize getting the information out to our constituents. So there's 3 steps he suggested. First thing would be to write a press release with the key findings, put them in the survey. He would offer to do a public presentation here that we could publicize so people could come and see it. And he'd present in a PowerPoint the key things of the presentation. Then after that, we should make the survey just available, copies here, so anyone can look at the full
Can
survey.
I clarify?
Mhm.
When you say make the survey available, are you talking about the quantitative data and not the comment portion?
It's a village document, so it's foilable. We really have to make the whole thing available, and I think it's unavoidable. Mark IV has foiled it already, so I think we should just make the whole thing available.
Instead of doing a narrative?
we're gonna do a narrative first to get the key points out there. And then Bill will do a presentation. I suggested the second meeting in May, to give us time to get all this stuff together and give him time to do a presentation. I
Okay.
spoke to him, earlier today.
Okay, and maybe it's because it's a municipality doing it, it's different, but this is the first I've heard where a survey releases the comments, just raw comments, from individuals whose privacy might be compromised. Usually a narrative is provided of the general comments.
Well, that's the first thing we're gonna do, is write a narrative and put that out there.
Okay, I'm just hesitant about putting people's
I
they thought was-
think because it's a
Okay.
village document, I think it's foilable.
That's what I'm saying, is municipality, does that make it different?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way we can avoid, making the whole thing
The only
public.
thing I could do is black out if there's names or anything.
Yeah, you gotta reject that.
The emails are not gonna be shared.
Oh, I
No, but you mean in the comments, there were a couple
Yeah.
comments where specific names
If there
were
were
mentioned.
specific
Yeah,
names
so
or something, I could,
I
Those
think there were
should
also
be taken out.
specifically signed surveys.
we don't have the surveys in.
Okay.
They're not in
I
there,
don't want
they're
them.
not in there, no. But anything that has a specific reference should be taken out
Right.
to protect people, so anonymity.
And the comp plan committee was given, the data as well,
Mhm.
minus the emails and anyone who sent their name in to volunteer for a board, so, but they have been told not to share that, but,
Mhm.
so this board knows.
Yeah, good,
Thank you.
good. Okay? All right, next item we have is the organizational meeting.
I think we pretty much discussed that, so we're still on track to do the 30th for the organization.
And I think I've talked to everyone about liaison positions individually, so I think we're good on that. So I think we move ahead.
So wait, before you do that,
Mhm.
any change, anything that we've discussed since that document that you originally sent out, we don't need to discuss that tonight, we'll do it at the organizational meeting.
Well,
Any new
the
things?
one thing I haven't discussed with everyone, and I talked with Renee about 2 new liaison positions that I'm proposing. One would be liaison for walkability, traffic calming, and bikeability, which obviously Renee is an obvious choice. Second would be implementation of the comprehensive plan, and third would be a liaison to the fire department. Okay?
Is there any other changes any board member has for the package?
I think everything else is going to be the same, and in reference, Dan, to the email that you sent me, 2 years ago, when Wilmright first came in, we investigated having a trustee liaison for that project, and the attorneys told us we cannot, because that implies a bias on board, so there can't be a liaison for that project. We can all be active in it, it doesn't preclude your participation in that, but we can't have a specific liaison, and that's a lesson we learned before. Okay? Anything else?
Just if there's any changes I need to make before the 30th, please let me know.
Will do. All right, member items.
Well, Zach isn't here, but I do have a question, I just don't bring him there, didn't I? Are the poles, the light poles being painted this year?
I don't know.
I'd like to suggest that happens.
They need it. Yeah, I agree with Lily. Also, there's one harp light, it's the first harp light, east of Sutherland Street on the south side of Monroe Avenue, where the shade has dropped down from the top of the lamp fixture, and so that needs a repair.
Can you repeat that again?
I haven't.
You need a GPS tracker on
I have a second.
Can you
The left
relay
side,
that
I
to
will
Zach?
relay both issues to Zach.
Thank you very much.
Second
Go
item
ahead, Lily.
is I had requested of Dorothea that she investigate the availability of larger public spaces for having the May 28th meeting. It appears that nothing is available, so I'm going to ask you, Jeff, if you see this as a potential problem for the village if we are unable to accommodate.
I'll tell you what I told Dorothea, and that is, I don't represent the village on this issue.
I understand that.
But if I was representing the village on this issue, I would contact your attorneys and say, We anticipate a large crowd. We can't find a room. Work it out with the court to have this on another date.
Okay,
I think you'd be running into trouble if you try to have that meeting here.
do you wanna talk to,
Yeah.
Dan?
I will talk to Nina.
Okay.
I mean, you just can't find a room to have it, and you know it's gonna be, I mean, I would guess it's gonna be huge.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna get them in here.
Right.
So, you gotta tell the court. We tried, and then
We
Dorothea
tried
can,
3 places.
Dorothea can tell you the list of the places she tried. Where did she work?
School, the church, and I tried the library.
And the library.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Things that have 2 rooms in the school, none available.
Okay,
Okay.
So my further thought would be to have Dorothea investigate
What is it?
in and around that time frame so that you can go to the judge with a, but Your Honor, we've got this.
Took the words out of my mouth, Jack.
Good, okay. I will talk to Dan. Okay?
I'll call the school.
Any other member items?
I have one.
Go ahead, Renee.
The signs that Peter Budd hates, appeared out of nowhere,
Yes.
and I made, Frank, you were on the email from Zach, but we really didn't get a warning.
No
And-
notice.
No, I didn't mind, because they were for pedestrian safety, but like, what normally happens when they make changes? What if they would have removed something we really liked and we had no warning and we wanted a voice? What are they supposed to do? What
Dave
is the
Garen,
state?
that's why I mentioned Dave Garen
Okay.
before, because he would have called us, we would have had a meeting, we would have talked about it. And Kevin Bush, has taken 3 steps backwards
Yeah.
and for, as a courtesy, you would think they would have told us.
Okay, so is there someone I should be reaching out to start building a relationship, a better relationship with state DOT, so they will let us know? I mean,
We might want to set up a meeting with Kevin Bush.
Okay.
I think that's just a
I mean, I
timely
worked with
thing
him
to
through
do.
the East Out Bike Lane project, but
Mhm.
that was a little hairy.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Are you speaking of the crosswalk signs?
Yeah,
They are incredibly ugly.
they really are, but we didn't have a
Incredibly
choice. I mean, we didn't, that's what the state's putting out as a solution statewide, but we didn't even get any notice so that we could warn people to wear their sunglasses.
Were they requested by the village?
No,
No,
No signage was requested.
no.
No notice was given.
No, we didn't
That's-
receive any
right?
notice.
I mean,
No,
that's what I
no.
wanted to clarify.
The ones by your crosswalk,
Our
Dan.
DPW
Yeah,
people.
they requested-
notice.
No, they just appeared.
Yeah, the state's putting them at non-signalized crossings as a safety measure, but they're,
Is there one in your front yard?
We don't
oh,
know.
pretty much. I can see it from, like, I eat my breakfast, I eat my
Yeah.
cereal.
I have to turn the lights on anymore.
Yeah.
If you shine an LED flashlight, you probably could turn all your house lights.
I mean, I'll take anything at this point, but it's just, it's the
What's that?
the process of like, why
I
would
don't
we
know.
notify?
You don't
and,
know.
Yeah. it's pretty strange.
It would be interesting to find out what the
Okay.
policy is and what their thoughts are, because they haven't shared them with us. And I'd be available to meet with them if you want to set up a meeting.
Okay.
We have a
I'll put
meeting
that
on
on.
Friday, too, don't forget.
It's on my schedule.
Good.
The hump lights, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Your Peter Bud's I'm happy with.
I know, and I got to call Peter Budd, because now I'm sure he's going ballistic.
I think he is, because he thought we requested him.
No, we didn't, I know.
Put him out.
Okay, village attorney, anything, Jack?
Yeah, I think attorney-client session.
I'll make a motion to enter attorney-client session.
Second.
All in favor? Is this regarding it's an attorney-client session, you don't have to say anything.
Should we have heard from Steve first?
You're gonna cover the cloud move during
Yeah,
your
I
session?
got the,
Okay.
yep,
Just wanted to make
Steve
sure
will be
it's
part of
separate.
this.
no,
I think it would be a good idea.
no.
Okay, good.
Figured you'd do it.
Okay, we can go into the other room and you can all stay here if you like. We'll
Go
take
ahead and
this.
send your agenda out.
We have the treasurer's report, minutes, and executive session.
And
If
the
we need
move
it.
to the cloud, some IT stuff.